My name is Edgar Mannheimer, and this is Kalam, a podcast about the Middle East.
The issue of Palestine, for me, Palestine is an extension of my life. I don't know how to express that. It's like a part of you is being hurt continuously hurt, and the so-called leader of the country, whose nationality I'm carrying, is, to say, at best silent, most likely contributing to this pain.
The voice you just heard belongs to a veteran of the Egyptian human rights and revolutionary community, Dr. Aida Seif El-Dawla. We'll be getting back to her shortly, but first, a reminder. For the best home-cooked Palestinian food in Sweden, head to Mazra on Skånegatan 82, run by Palestinian restaurateur Nidal Kersh. Mazra means farm in Arabic, and visiting this place truly feels like going to a farm, having a nice glass of wine, and fresh, small plates of delicious food. Needless to say, the best hummus in Sweden. And in this lovely weather we're having right now, there's no place I'd rather be, so let me catch you at Mazra on Skånegatan 82. If you like Kalam podcast, we'd like to remind you to rate the show and to subscribe to it in whatever podcast application you're listening to right now. It helps other people find out about us. And if you want access to our Kalam Shorts series, 10 to 15 minute explainers of important words and concepts, then join Club Kalam on Patreon for just $3 a month. Or if you just want to support us, please consider signing up at Club Kalam on Patreon for just $3 a month. That's patreon.com/Kalam podcast. And for continuous updates, follow us on Instagram at Kalam Podcast. Now, on to the show. Dr. Aida Seif El-Dawla is a retired psychiatrist and co-founder of El Nadim Center for Rehabilitation of Victims of Violence and Torture, an Egyptian human rights organization. Dr. Aida was heavily involved in the Egyptian Revolution of 2011, and due to her activism, the now extreme reactionary Egyptian state has her under close surveillance and has imposed a travel ban on her. She rarely ventures outside, so I was honored to have been invited into her home. The pain in Dr. Aida's voice is the pain countless Egyptian revolutionaries feel who were so close to achieving their goals in 2011, but who in the end failed. The Egyptian army, aided by many conservative and reactionary forces in and outside the country, ended up taking back control. And as we've heard previously in this podcast, a central goal of the 2011 Egyptian revolution was the liberation of Palestine. I remember back in October of 2023 when I was in Cairo covering the only pro-Palestinian demonstration that made it to Tahrir Square before being violently dispersed. I remember seeing the plainclothes state security officers grab dozens of people and stick them in the back of cars and trucks. The 200 or so arrested on that day are still in jail. But before the violence and the arrests, I saw political protest for the first time in Egypt since President Sisi's coup in 2013. And in the midst of these protests, I ran into Aida Seif, also a veteran Egyptian revolutionary and mathematics professor, as well as the mother of the icon of the revolution itself, Ala Abdel Fattah, who has been in jail for the better part of 15 years. Before we hear the full interview with Dr. Aida, I just want to play you Aida Seif's answer when I asked her back in October how it feels like to be protesting in Egypt again. How does it feel to protest again in Egypt?
I'm feeling very sad actually, because I'm comparing this to 2011. I'm comparing it to when we were able to kick out the Israeli ambassador just by popular demand. So I'm glad طبعا. It's also very saddening, and it feels it is it puts misaligned under the fact that we were defeated. If we had not been defeated, we would not be in this position. The Palestinians would not be on their own like this.
Do you have any kind of hope that this... That was Aida Seif back in October. And now, without further ado, here's Dr. Aida Seif El-Dawla. Thank you very much for speaking to us today at Kalam Podcast. So, I think a lot of people in the West who are not familiar with Egypt, if we just focus on Egypt as a country, they're surprised that there aren't huge protests or like student encampments or anything like this in Egypt at the moment. Some people think that maybe Egyptians are indifferent to the Palestinian issue, and I try to explain to them the political dynamics of, state repression and the reason that there aren't any demonstrations. But could you tell us about the Egyptian people's relationship to the Palestinian issue and to Palestinians and what it means to Egyptians?
Yeah. Well, the Palestinians and Palestine is an integral part of Egyptians' lives. Even younger generations who have not witnessed the history or read much about the history, somehow it is there. It is there. And even during the revolution in 2011, one of the major events of the revolution was the raiding of the embassy of the occupation in Giza, opposite the university's bridge. Maybe they know little about Egypt, but Egypt is a country with about 60,000 political prisoners. And there was actually a protest, a big protest, where dozens of people were rounded up and arrested. And that was, I think, on the 20th of October, or the Friday after the 7th of October. And they are still in prison until this moment. Their detention is being renewed automatically. And all attempts since then to express any form of protest or any form of solidarity with the Palestinians is aborted immediately. Young people who raise banners or who try to march. Recently, 2 university students who wrote a statement, Students for Palestine, have been arrested, one from Cairo and the other from a city in Delta. A group of women who, after the coming out of the testimonies of the sexual torture to which Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons were subjected to, a group of women wrote a statement, and they went to the UN Women Office in Maadi to submit a statement requesting their intervention and expressing their protest regarding what's happening to the women in Palestine and in Sudan, and the silence of UN Women and the United Nations. They were beaten and they were arrested on the spot, and because they had famous names, journalists, lawyers, human rights defenders, they were released the following day. But in the meantime, they were held in a police station, and they appeared the following day in state security prosecution. They were added to a case, which means that now they are defendants in a state security case. So maybe people who are wondering why there are no demonstrations in Cairo or elsewhere in Egypt do not realize the extent of oppression that Egypt has been suffering over the past 11 years, since 2013. But the issue of Palestine, for me, Palestine is an extension of my life. I don't know how to express that. It's like a part of you is being hurt continuously hurt, and the so-called leader of the country, whose nationality I'm carrying, is, to say, at best silent, most likely contributing to this pain. And he is angry that Israel has entered Rafah. Okay, fine, you have to be angry. But to punish Israel, he refuses to coordinate the entrance of aid to Palestinians. That you are punishing Israelis with allowing them to starve more Palestinians, to kill more Palestinians. It's a shame. It's a shame, and we feel frustrated. Many people feel frustrated. Even the protests that were, the vigils that were being held at the press syndicate have stopped. The security control in Egypt, yeah, sometimes I know it also exists elsewhere, but it is madness. It is madness. Let me share with you an anecdote. A few days ago, we had a close friend, who was living in the States, has been living in the States for 10 years, and he came for a visit. So we decided to invite him out for lunch. So we went out to lunch. I won't mention the name of the place, but it's a popular place. And the waiter asked immediately, "Is this a meeting?" And we said, "No, this is not a meeting, this is lunch." And then we learned through friends who are in contact with security that they have been checking on us if we are having a meeting to plan for a demonstration, walking out of that restaurant into I don't know where. But to that extent, to that ridiculous extent, they are not ready to allow any form of protest or any form of expression of solidarity. Add to that we have no idea what they are doing, what they are planning. Early on, Sisi, in several of his joint press conferences, was always referring to the declared agenda of the Israelis, the declared agenda, al-mu'lan. He never said what was not declared, which apparently, he gave the impression that he knew. No, I mean, when I think back now, the after years of lack of street activism in Cairo returned in 2000 with the Palestinian Intifada, and then extended after that, of course, with the U.S. invasion of Iraq. And I very well remember the first meeting that we had. We were 5 women, and at our organization, and we said that we should do something for the Intifada, and that was the first meeting in what later became the Popular Committee in Solidarity with the Palestinian Intifada, which then extended in number and in scope and across governorates, and was then hosted by the Hisham Mubarak Law Center, which was then chaired by the late human rights lawyer Aida Seif El-Dawla. And that went on for a while, and then in 2012, when there was a possibility to enter Gaza, people just stormed,
After the revolution.
Yes, after the revolution. Yeah, after the revolution. And since then, the attempt to repeat at least some of what was done then is being just blocked. There was a petition that was started by the Egyptian committee, the Popular Committee in support of the Palestinian cause, an attempt to revive the first committee, and they collected meds and clothes and food and everything, and they tried several times to take them across Rafah. No access to Rafah at all. People are stopped long before Rafah. There was and then they managed to send the material they had collected with an international organization. There was this call from the press syndicate for an international convoy of conscience, and actually people did come to Egypt to join that and to go to Rafah. No access was granted. A few of them, 4 I think of them, stood in front of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to submit their requests. They were arrested. They were foreigners. All of them were arrested. They were released later, but all of them were arrested. So that's where we are. I think it's stupid what they are doing, because, sometimes you feel like, use us, use our anger, allow this anger to vent. But then again, there are 2 risks there. There are 2 risks. A, we don't know what they are up to. Did he promise that there is not going to be any protests? Are such protests going to count not in his favor, against his favor. And the second thing, of course, is that when people take to the streets, you never know how far they're going to chant. Okay. Although until now, all the chants that were, it was the chants protesting the position of the Egyptian government was the chants protesting the position of the Arab nation. Sisi was not mentioned in name. But then maybe he never knows, maybe he cannot even tolerate that much, even if it's for the Palestinians. And it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking. It's and Netanyahu and the US are giving him excellent lessons that forget about the international community. It doesn't matter at all. If you scroll through TikTok, there are individual videos made by people who feel anguish. Real anguish and shame.
A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed a Egyptian writer and researcher called Nihal Al-Asr, who lives in London, and she wrote a chapter in a collection of essays for Verso Books, where she makes the argument that Egyptian democracy and Palestinian liberation are inextricably linked, since if a government would be democratically elected in Egypt, it would immediately rip up the peace treaty, or at least take very strong steps towards confronting Israel. And it just strikes me as, obviously it's not a democracy, but if it were, the issue of Palestine would be such an obvious thing to take advantage of for any leader, because I don't think that there's any other issue that unites left and right and poor and rich in this country as this specific issue. Obviously there's a reactionary minority who don't care about Palestinians, but I think it's a minority.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I certainly hope so. Yes. One of the slogans that were being chanted during the revolution, and I think also recently, was that the road to the liberation of Palestine goes through Cairo. Yes, it's not that it's not a democracy. It's a fascist military rule. But then again,
it could be a populist fascist military rule. You know what I mean? It sounds crazy not to take advantage of this.
أيوة لا بس no because they are because it's not an independent country. The leadership is not independent. All right. It's they can't make up their own minds. They don't have their own positions. Things have to be. There is the aid, and there is the loans, and there is the dependency, and there is also the alliance. I don't know who the leadership of this country is allies of. Do they support the Palestinians? I'm not sure.
You mean like their personal affiliations or their personal feelings?
Yes.
Yeah, because we may get to this, but this was a big change, obviously, after Nasser died and Sadat took over. It seems that Sadat personally did not feel very much sympathy for Palestinians and maybe that faction of a political class.
Well, it doesn't matter if you feel sympathy or not. If these people claim that they are referring, that their reference is law, an international law, an international community, and that does international law and international community accept occupation? It doesn't. It's not I who say this. It's they who say this. In their so-called charters, or probably they feel threatened with the presence of resistance at their borders rather than the presence of Israel, of an occupation. And of course, there are people who feel that we've done enough for Palestine. I don't know what is the enough that we've done for Palestine. Not that I remember. I'm 70 years old, and I can't remember really what exactly they are referring to. And so, no, we should focus on Egypt, and I don't know what, but there is no focus on Egypt. There is no focus on Egypt. It is interlinked, whether we like it or not. It's a region, and our region, this region, is part of a Zionist expansionist project, okay? Deny it as much as you want. It's the truth, and Israel is not making a secret out of it. And it doesn't really, I mean, what Sadat used to think, or what Mubarak, Mubarak, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Mubarak at least had a little bit of political intelligence. You know, the people, the sentiment of the people was a factor in his calculations, all right? For Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the people don't count. They are a side effect of being a president, you know. And if he can do without the people, you know, and keep only the circles that he's surrounding himself with, he would be extremely happy. But it's a liberation movement. And the farce of the matter is that this happens so close in time to the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And, you know, it's like two parallel stories, and there isn't even an attempt to dress the hypocrisy, you know? And the amount of lies that are being said and taken for granted, like, for example, the bombing by Iran of Israel. That's how the story starts. No, it started with an assassination in Syria of an Iranian diplomat.
You know, the bombing of a consulate, which didn't even happen during World War II.
Exactly. And so bits and pieces are removed out of the rhetoric to make the story acceptable.
He didn't even realize he was saying something crazy.
No, because it is really part of him.
Yeah.
He can relate to brown or colored people, or I don't know how we want to name us, as subject of charity and pity and compassion, not as equals.
No. Yeah, brown people, I think, in the eyes of many Westerners, are either the victim or a savage that's going to kill you.
Yeah.
And I think...
or the veto bearers at the Security Council.
Yeah, after Chinese.
Isn't it
absolutely,
a coincidence? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've thought about this a lot. Why, like, there's so much obviously, like, cultural material that the West has begun to problematize, like you know, like Orientalist literature and all that kind of stuff. But there still is so much that is extremely problematic, that like gets sort of injected into your brain.
Yeah,
something
they're
like
not the same people.
Sure, like
they are not the same people. Look at this Namat. I don't know what this. What's her name?
Shafi.
Namat Shafi.
The Colombia president.
Yeah, changing her name. Okay, so sorry. Yeah, you change your name as much as you want. Your roots don't change. Okay, and she wants to pose. Yani, we have a saying كده in Arabic, which it translated means more royal than the king. ملكي أكتر من الملك. So you thought you were doing a favor. You thought you were promoting yourself as an enemy of a students' protests. Yani, pathetic. It's pathetic.
Yeah. So if we say that maybe today Egypt is doing the least, at least in terms of the state, when was Egypt doing the most for Palestine? You mentioned you're 70 years old.
I don't know when Egypt was doing the most. I remember when Egyptians were trying to do the most. Egypt, before Sadat, there were no relations with Israel. There was a ban on Israeli goods. I witnessed the time when my first passport during school time, I was 15, had usable for all countries except Israel and South Africa. Okay. And then Sadat and the normalization. But the normalization never really took place. It took place at the level of businessmen, at the level of the state. You have somebody like Mustafa Bakri, Masan, who is the spokesperson of this new union of Arab tribes, God knows where they have disappeared. And he's supposed to be a very vocal Nasserite. And when 7th of October happened and then the bombing of Gaza began, he's a member of parliament. He got the Camp David Accords, the document. It was a document. I don't know, maybe it was empty paper. And he tore it and he said, no more peace. Now it is war. you know, a demagogue. And then he keeps saying how Sisi and his regime are supporting Gaza and Palestine, and I don't know what. So what the regime is doing, we heard, for example, I don't know to what extent this is true, that there were commercial boats traveling from Port Said to an Israeli port, Sderot or Sderot, something like that, during the bombing of North Gaza. And there is a renewal of the gas agreements. So when did the Egyptian state do what for Palestine? I have not seen this. But taban it's moving from bad to worse. But it was always the Egyptian people for whom Palestine and the liberation of Palestine was an issue, and any movement or mobilization or conferences or protests or whatever, or hatta convoys, solidarity convoys, that was done by the people. For example, during the Intifada, there was the Arab Doctors Union was at the time chaired by Dr. Abdel Fattouh, who is now in prison, and the convoys to Gaza, the medical convoys to Gaza, was part of the routine work of that union. Forget it now. That is the doctors, you can forget about it. You can forget about it. Even the Gazans who have come to Egypt to receive treatment, most of the support they receive from groups who move not underground, but without announcement.
Sort of informal civil society.
Yeah, informal. They're not even organizations.
Yeah.
They're just groups. They check and they search and they try to find where the families are being held, and they go and try to provide as much as those families need, because what we hear is that their treatment is terrible, that the Palestinian embassy is hardly providing any help, and that in those hospitals they are held as if in semi-prisons. They cannot communicate with the world outside. They're not allowed mobiles. They're not allowed visits. Are only during visiting time. And if the hospital management gets suspicious, they start questioning. And we in our organization, for example, we have tried to contact the management of two hospitals to organize. We're a psychological rehabilitation center, to organize psychological support groups for the kids. No, not allowed.
It feels, it's almost as if it's just like a form of humiliation when you're not even allowed to help. It's not. I mean, how much can Egyptians take? I mean, it's a difficult question, of course, but. Where does things just go too far?
It is humiliating, and it is very humiliating, and you cannot say it. I cannot say it. I cannot tell someone who is coming to Egypt, paying so much money to this warmonger Ibrahim al-Arjani and his company, from under the bombing, barely surviving, and then tell her, look, I'm sorry, but there is not much I can do because I could get arrested. I cannot say that. I mean, they humble you, and if you talk to them, the few women that I have talked to, they barely mention what happened to them in Gaza. Alhamdulillah is all they say. What they are focusing now is how they cannot have a residence, for example. They want to enroll their children in schools. They want to make sure that the sick child has the best medical care. So they humble you, and you feel ashamed, and you hate this regime even more. And I was more or less much younger, but I was never a fan of Gamal Abdel Nasser, But to start my life under Gamal Abdel Nasser and to end my life under Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, that's quite a decline. That's quite a decline. And the helplessness and the huge price that people pay. Yani in the 20 years ago, you'd go on a protest and the young people would go on a protest. I have never been arrested, yani beaten up, but so not arrested. But so when young people got arrested from well, they could be beaten, some were tortured, but you would know that the ceiling of that is 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. Now it's a lifetime. Now it's a lifetime. And there are so many young people who are dying to do anything, dying to go to take to the streets. And those people who were arrested for the banner, they did not even walk on the street. They did not even take to the street. They just
the UN?
put up No, the UN women. No, this was a security communication from the UN to the police. No, this banner that was put up in Alexandria.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. There was no march. There was just the banner. Apparently, their cameras, the police cameras, picked them up. And now they are in prison. And they will have 150 days, 10 times 15, to which the state security is entitled. And then they will go to court. And their renewal will be 45. And today, those days are their exams, and they're not sitting for their exams. Yani during Mubarak, it was tough, and he was a dictator. But theoretically, you could imagine a way out if A, B, and C.
And now?
Now I pray. What can I tell you? It's a disgrace. I feel ashamed, I feel disgraced, and I don't know what to do. I
think a lot of people feel the same way, and I certainly, I'm much less experienced than you are, but I've certainly never felt as hopeless as I do right now.
Yeah. And it has nothing to do, I don't think it has something to do with the experience. Yani, not anymore. Yani I also come from a generation where political activism at my young and university years had to do with underground work. This no longer exists.
The sort of networks of underground activism no longer exists.
Yani underground work really needs Snowden. How can you? We have been tracked through our mobile in that lunch.
Probably with Israeli software.
I don't know. But anyway, that was lunch, for heaven's sake, that was lunch. So to go somewhere, and if I don't want people to know where I am, anybody, not only the police, I have to go without my mobile. I have to make sure that there are no cameras on the street. If somebody has a familiar face, they should see it. It's ridiculous. And people are not able now, or have not found the way to be able to link and to network. In the past, in the 70s, there were political parties, underground political parties, so there was some kind of an organization. Okay, it did not succeed, but it was functional, also because it was mainly among students. But for example, if you look at the protests that are taking place in Egypt now among the workers, the strikes, every second day there is a major strike. But what they need is linking. What they need is a solidarity network. What they need is exchange of. How are they going to do this? Something new has to develop.
Yeah.
And it's not social media.
It's something we haven't discovered yet. We don't know what it is.
And it's not artificial intelligence.
No, this we can agree on.
No, we need innovation from human intelligence.
Yeah. I believe that. Dr. Aida, I've taken up a lot of your time, and
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
really, really appreciate you speaking with me.
It's a pleasure, Edgar. Anytime. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was retired psychiatrist and Egyptian revolutionary Dr. Aida Seif El-Dawla and the 13th episode of the Kalam podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, and if you want to support the show, you can. Go to patreon.com/Kalam podcast and sign up to Club Kalam, where you'll gain access to lots of great bonus material for just $3 a month. Until next week, that's all from us. Kalam was written and hosted by me, Edgar Mannheimer. Research and production by Sam Karl Samra. Poetry reading in Arabic by Khulud Saghir. And sound design by Arthur Mannheimer.